Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Today I'm going to present an experimental and correlational research study. First, the title of my experimental research is the effectiveness of dictogloss technique in improving EFL learners' listening comprehension. This means I want to find out whether using the dictogloss technique can really help students improve their listening skills in English. Listening comprehension is often considered difficult for EFL learners because students must understand spoken language in real time. In many classrooms, listening lessons focus only on answering questions after listening, which may not fully engage students. Dictogloss is a listening technique that requires students to listen carefully, take notes, and work together to reconstruct a text. This technique is expected to make students more active during listening activities. The purpose of this study is to find out whether dictogloss is more effective than conventional listening instruction. The study compares two students who learn using dictogloss with students who learn using a traditional listening approach. Based on the background, the research problem is there a significant difference in listening comprehension between students using dictogloss and those using conventional instructions? And then there are two hypotheses. The null hypothesis states that there is no significant difference in listening comprehensions between students in the experimental group and in the control group. The alternative hypothesis states that there is a significant difference in listening comprehension between students in the experimental group and in the control group. This study used a quantitative experimental method. The independent variable, or what we change, is the dictogloss technique. The dependent variable, or what we measure, is the student listening comprehensions. In simple terms, we see the different teaching method and measure the student listening scores. The study involved 20 EFL students. 10 students are placed in the experimental group and taught using dictogloss. 10 students are placed in the control group and taught using a conventional method. After the teaching process, both groups take the same listening text. This design is called a post-test only design with two independent groups. This slide shows the listening test scores of both groups. The experimental group scores are shown in the left and the control group are shown on the right. From a quick look, we can see that the experimental group tends to have higher scores, but still we need to analyze it. To analyze the data, we use the Mann-Whitney U test. This test is used because we are comparing two different groups. The number of students is small and we do not assume normal distribution. Mann-Whitney works by ranking all scores and comparing the ranks between groups. A higher mean rank indicates better performance. On this slide, I show the steps to analyze the data using SPSS. First, open the SPSS. In variable view, create two variables, scores and group. Value 1 experimental and value 2 control. Switch to data view. Enter all 20 scores under score and assign group value accordingly. Click Analyze, Non-Parametric Test, Legacy Dialog, and then two independent samples. Move score to text variable list and move group to grouping variable. In group variable, define group 1 for experimental and group 2 for control. Select Mann-Whitney U and then click OK. This allows SPSS to compare the two groups statistically. The result shows that the experimental group has a mean rank of 13.90. Meanwhile, the control group has a mean rank of 7.10. This means that students in the experimental group generally perform better than those in the control group. The significance value from the Mann-Whitney test is 0.009. The rule is simple. If the significant value is less than 0.05, the result is significant. Since 0.009 is smaller than 0.05, the difference between the two groups is statistically significant. Based on the results, null hypothesis which state that there is no significance in listening comprehension between students in the experimental group and the control group, this is rejected and the alternative hypothesis is exact. This means there is a significant difference between students taught using dictogloss and those taught conventionally. Therefore, we can conclude that the dictogloss technique is effective in improving EFL learners' listening comprehensions. The second study is a correlational research. The title is The Relationship Between Student Perception of Vocabulary Learning and Speaking Fluency. This study does not test on teaching method but examines the relationship between two variables. Vocabulary knowledge is essential for speaking fluency in English. Students need sufficient vocabulary to express ideas smoothly and confidently. However, students differ in how they feel about learning vocabulary. The purpose of this study is to examine the relationship between student perception of vocabulary learning and their speaking fluency. The study aims to understand whether positive perceptions are associated with better speaking performance. The research problem is there a significant relationship between student perception of vocabulary learning and their speaking fluency? The null hypothesis states that there is no significant relationship between student perception of vocabulary learning and speaking fluency. The alternative hypothesis states that there is a significant relationship between student perception of vocabulary learning and speaking fluency. The predictor variable is student perception of vocabulary learning. The outcome variable is speaking fluency. This study used a quantitative correlational design. There is 2 EFL students involved. No treatment is applied because the study only examines the relationship. This slide shows student perception score and speaking fluency scores. Each student has one perception score and one speaking score. These scores are used to see whether students with higher perception scores tend to have higher speaking fluency. The Spearman correlation test is used because we are analyzing the relationship between two variables. Spearman does not require normal distribution. It shows two things, the direction and the strength of the relationship. SPSS calculates how closely perception scores move together with speaking scores. On this slide, I show the step to analyze the data using SPSS. First, open the SPSS. Create two variables, perception and speaking. Then enter the 20 paired scores in data view, and then click Analyze, Correlate, Average, move perception and speaking to the variables, and then check Spearman, then click OK. The correlation coefficient is 0.795. This value indicates a strong positive relationship. This means that when student perception of vocabulary learning increase, their speaking fluency also tends to increase. The significant value is 0.001. The rule is, if the significant value is less than 0.01, the relationship is significant. Since 0.001 is much smaller than 0.01, the relationship is statistically significant, not by random coincidence. Based on the results, the null hypothesis, which states that there is no significant relationship between student perception of vocabulary learning and speaking fluency, is rejected, and the alternative hypothesis is accepted. There is a significant and strong positive relationship between student perception of vocabulary learning and speaking fluency. This means students who have a positive perception toward vocabulary learning tends to speak more fluently. And that is the end of my video. Thank you so much for your attention. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.